Should happen in a minute. Okay, recording is started, and let me share my screen, and let me open this. So I hope you are able to see the slide too.
Yes, sir.
Oh, good. I hope if you've gone through the material of last time, this slide should be very clear to you. We start with an original DFA, which is given at the top, and then we want to minimize it, or we want to somehow transform it into a smaller sized automaton, which is given below, such that the language of the two automata remain the same. That is the purpose, right? And the important concept that we defined in order to do this was this notion of state equivalence of two states, right? And what is this idea of equivalence? If I may go back to the I'm sorry. If I may go back to the previous slide, that will make things a little bit clearer. So given two states P and Q, we can say that a word X separates this state P from Q if starting with P on X, you go to say a final state, and starting with Q, you go to a non-final state, or the other way, right? That is, X is able to distinguish the status of P and Q for us. You know, this string X is such. In that case, we say that X separates P from Q. And if there exists such an X which separates P from Q, we say that P and Q are separable. And this can be denoted as P not equivalent to Q, if there exists such an X, right, which satisfies this property. So, and if there does not exist such an X, then we say that P and Q are equivalent. That is for all strings, you know, if we start from P and execute the automaton on X, and if you reach the final state, then starting from Q also you will reach the final state, and the other way, right? So I hope this definition is clear to you. Now, this is an equivalence relation, as we saw. Because it's an equivalence relation, it partitions the set of states into baskets. So the so-called equivalence classes of these equivalent relations. So here in this basket, you collect everything which is equivalent to, let's say, 3, which will be same as everything which is equivalent to 4. So, 3, 4, and 5 fall into this basket because they are all mutually equivalent to each other. Similarly, another basket you will get is 1, 2. You will never get something that 3 will be equivalent to 5, but 4 will not be equivalent to 5. That cannot happen because of the properties of transitivity and symmetry. Okay. And so it's a well-known result in discrete maths that an equivalence relation partitions the set into baskets called equivalence classes, and the equivalence class of a set is denoted by square bracket. So equivalence class of state P is denoted by square bracket P, right? This is the equivalence class or the basket of P, right? And then we collapse this basket into a single state. The basket of the initial state will form the initial state of the collapsed automaton. The basket of the final state will form one of the final states of the collapsed automatons. So you do this for every final state, and then you add transitions by this simple rule. So the construction was given here. This was the construction of the automaton. So I hope you are clear about this construction. Basically, the states of the collapsed automata are the baskets of the original automata by this equivalence relation that we defined. The set of initial state is the equivalence class of the initial state of the automaton. This is wrong. This should be just Q0. Yes. So if Q0 was the initial state of M, then the initial state of the collapsed automaton is the equivalence class of Q0, right? And to get the set of final states of the collapsed automaton, you take a final state in the original automaton and consider its equivalence class. That class will become the final state of the new automaton. And the way you calculate the transitions is starting from the equivalence class of P on NA, you first, so you have a state P, and then its equivalence class consists of, let's say, these 3 things, and to find out where you go on a letter A from this equivalence class, this basket, which basket do you go to? What you do is from this P, you consider on A where you will go. Let's say you will go to some state called P prime. This state is Q, okay, and this may be R. You go to P prime from P. Then what you do is you take the equivalence class of P prime. So this will be some basket, and maybe it will consist of two states, P prime and Q prime, right? And you make this whole red basket go to this blue basket. That is what you do. So you first work out this blue transition, so you will know P and P prime, and then take their baskets. So this is what it is saying, and that is what we had done to construct this automaton, this collapsed automaton from this. So I hope you are able to see how we construct the automaton. Of course, in constructing this automata, we have to know the equivalence classes of states. And for that, we need to know which state is equivalent to which. So we have already defined one way of collapsing deterministic automata, minimizing deterministic automata by actually collecting its states into baskets and then defining transitions between baskets. So you get a smaller automaton, right? And only thing we need to know for this is what are the baskets, and to know the baskets we have to know which state is equivalent to which and which is not equivalent to which, right? And that equivalence is defined by this formula which we saw before. That is P is equivalent to Q if for all states P leads to a final state if and only if Q leads to a final state on the same string, right? So no string is able to distinguish between P and Q as far as acceptance or non-acceptance goes, right? Any questions so far? So are you able to see how the red basket goes to the blue basket? We pick up any representative from the red basket, take its transition on A and find out the state to which it goes and then collect its basket. That is the state to which you will go. This is what this line is saying. Okay, so this is how we calculate the transitions. Now, this definition of the collapsed automaton is also called the quotient automaton because we are quotienting this set of states by this equivalence relation to get these baskets and making those as the elements of our new automaton. So this is also called the quotient automaton construction. Okay. Okay. Now we have the following properties. We have these two well-formedness properties of this construction. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do proofs of this. So new page after. What we have to prove is P is equivalent to Q. That implies delta PA is equivalent to delta QA for all A belonging to sigma, right? So if you start with equivalent states and make a transition on letter A, so you start with P or you start with Q, if you make a transition on letter A to some P prime and you make a transition because these are DFA, so there's only a unique transition. You make a transition to Q prime, maybe Q prime is same as P prime, we don't know, okay? But if these two are equivalent, okay, if these two are equivalent, then this P prime and Q prime will also be equivalent. That is what we are saying. So is that clear? Now we have to prove this. So how does the proof? The proof is simple. I will write it in blue. So first we assume that P is equivalent to Q. That means for all possible strings, going from P on that string will lead to acceptance if and only if going from that string on Q will lead to exception. And then what? If we assume that P is equal to Q, then let us start with the transition of for any Y belonging to sigma star. So pick up any arbitrary string Y belonging to sigma star. And of course, you have to prove this is equivalent to true. So we first start with this state. So delta of P on A, if we start with that, right? And if we do delta hat, if we start with this state and run it on this arbitrary string y, this will, okay, belongs to F if and only if. Now, how can we simplify this underlined part? Delta hat of delta will give you delta hat of P from string AY. Right? This blue thing is equivalent to this blue thing. Right? This is by the property of delta hat. You know this. And this is equivalent to delta hat of Q on AY belongs to F. Why is this the case? Induction hypothesis. Induction hypothesis says that from P, if you go on a string to final state, then from Q also you go on the same string, you go to final state, because P is equal to, in our case, the string is AY. Right? This implies that delta hat of delta of Q on A on Y belongs to F. Now we proved this equivalence, this chain of equivalence for arbitrary Y, that is for all strings. If you start with delta hat of P AY, then on any string Y, you will go to final state if and only from delta hat of QY will go to final state. So this thing is proved. So this is by definition we get, hence we get this. Hence result. So this is a short proof of, this property. So I hope some of you already studied this proof, but if not, let me know. Just one thing I need to do. I'll put myself on chat so that I can see if there are any questions. Okay, so feel free to ask questions on the chat. Why am I not getting conversation? Yeah, okay, I got the chat. Yeah, okay. So what we did was we proved this property. Next property we want to prove is this. It says that if P belongs to F, if and only if the equivalence of class belongs to this F prime which was defined here. Now, of course, if P belongs to F, then its equivalence class is included in F prime by definition. So this way implication is from definition of F prime, right? So this way implication is very easy to show. What about the reverse implication? For showing reverse implication, what do we have to say? If equivalence class of P belongs to F prime, okay, implies there exists Q belonging to F such that Q belongs to equivalence, Q is equivalent to P. Let me rub this out. Right? Since Q and P are equivalent, delta hat of P on epsilon will belong to F, because if they are equivalent for every possible string, they will take you to the either final state or non-final state. If and only if delta hat of Q on epsilon, I think this epsilon and belongs to are getting confused. This is belongs to F, right? But delta of a P on epsilon is same as P. So that means P belongs to F if and only if Q belongs to F. So, and since we started with Q belonging to F, we can also, this implies that P belongs to F. So we have proved this implication in the reverse direction. So I think we have proof of these two simple properties of this equivalence that we have defined, right? That is from equivalent states. On a transition, you only go to equivalent states, and every state in an equivalence class within F prime is a final state. So So set of final states actually consists of some. So my f prime will consist of maybe 3 baskets, where each basket will contain some final states. Let's say 2 final states here, 3 here, 1 here. So basically f prime partitions the set of final states into some baskets. That is what this second lemma is saying. Okay. So this simple properties I have proved here. Anyway, should remember this property. And then we have this one more last property, which says, remember what did we say here? We constructed delta prime by taking the basket of P. Basket of P on A goes to what? You first, in the original automaton on P, you will go to some state P prime, then you take the basket of P prime, and that is what gives you. Now what we are proving is that for arbitrary string X, this property extends, and that can be proved by structural induction on X. Okay, so we will see the proof of this also. Let me add a page. So what do we have to prove? Delta hat of equivalence class of P on an arbitrary string X. Okay, is equal to, sorry, this is delta prime, because we are running the, remember the transition function of the quotiented automaton is called delta prime, and the transition function of the original automaton is called delta. So let me write this very clearly, because there can be confusion here. Here we have delta prime, because we are starting from a basket and moving on a string in the collapsed automaton. And if we take the extended transition in the collapsed automaton, this is same as starting with P in the original automaton, going through whole string X, and whatever you go to, sorry, this is delta hat of that, and then taking the equivalence class of the final state after X in the original automaton. And the proof is by induction on string X, right? So what is the base case? Base case is when X is equal to epsilon. Okay, and so delta hat of equivalence class of a state P on epsilon is equal to what? Equivalence class of P, right? Because this is delta prime. Sorry, I keep forgetting that. Is P, because epsilon leaves you in the same state. So in the collapsed automaton, the basket of P remains same as basket of P under epsilon. And this is equal to, P is equal to delta hat of P on epsilon. You will agree with that. And so if you take the equivalence class of this is same as this. So this is a very simple proof for epsilon. For induction step, what do? We start with delta hat of equivalence class of P on a string XA, right? Now by property of delta hat, we will get this same as delta prime of delta prime hat of equivalence class of P on X, and then whatever equivalence class you go to, you take the delta prime of that on A, right? But by induction hypothesis, this underlying thing, because this, for a smaller string, we can assume that this property holds. So we can replace this underlying term. So remaining thing I leave as it is, and the underlying thing can be replaced as delta hat of P on X and its equivalence class, right? So instead of this underlying thing, we'll write down this underlying thing, right? Comma A, right? But by definition of delta prime, delta prime was defined as this. So if you have something of this form, we can write it in this form. We can write this as is equal to delta of delta prime of Px A and this. This is by, so this was, let me write the justification in, this was by induction hypothesis, and this is by definition of delta prime, right? And you can say this is, of course, it's easy to see that this is equivalent to delta hat of P on XA ka square bracket. So assuming by induction hypothesis that the property holds for X, we have proved it for a longer string XA, and hence we have completed the proof. So you should be able to understand how these proofs are there. Now these proofs are given in Cosen. I'm just doing it here, so reminding you of it. If so, you have done it. And once you know we have these equivalence classes in the between states worked out in the original automaton, we can produce this collapsed automaton M quotiented with the equivalence. Now what we finally want to prove is that this quotiented automaton recognizes same language as the original automaton. And I'm going to do this proof. Okay. So again, the proof is fairly simple. We say that X, let me do one thing. Let me make my pen thinner. X belongs to language of the quotiented automaton, the minimized automaton, if and only if delta prime hat of equivalence class of the start state on string X belongs to F prime, right? This is the definition of acceptance. You know, delta prime hat should take you to a final state. This is if and only if delta prime hat on that same Q0 F X let us see. Yes, so this is correct. Right? How was F prime defined? It was all those equivalence classes of some final state, right? And so, you know, since this has to belong to F prime, it will have to be equivalent to F for some F belonging to this, right? Now, by this lemma, we can say that this is equivalent to delta hat starting from Q0 on X, you know, equivalence class is equal to F, right? This is by this lemma. This is by this lemma. Okay? By this lemma, we get this equivalence. And then by using the previous property, we get delta hat of Q0 on X is equal to belongs to F. That is what we get. Okay. And this is same as saying that X belongs to language of M. So this simple 5-line proof shows, you know, having done all the work of deriving those lemmas, we can see that the language of the quotiented automaton is same as the language of the original automaton. So not only have we given this construction, we also proved that it recognizes the same set of words. That is, this collapsing of automata that we did here is correct. That it will have the same language as this, and this construction works in all cases. So we have done this minimization algorithm, but in order to apply the minimization algorithm, you need to know what are the equivalent, the baskets, you know, under the state equivalence, right? We need to know which state is equivalent to which state. Given that, we can apply the algorithm and get the quotiented automaton. Now, how to get these equivalences? Because the definition of equivalence is what? You know, that two states are equivalent, you can say that P is equivalent to Q if and only if. Can somebody remind me of the definition? When is P equivalent to Q? Okay, I'm going to pick up a student at random and ask. Okay, so let's see, we have participants here. Okay, Vinay, can you please help me out here a little bit? Vinay, are you able to hear me? Okay, I don't have response from Vinay. So, Piyush? We gave this definition, right? 2 slides before. Okay, anybody?
For all x in sigma star, delta hat px belongs to f if and only if delta hat qx belongs to f.
Delta hat px belongs to f if and only if delta hat qx belongs to capital F, right? This is the definition. And hence, suppose we want to put the negation of this. When is P not equivalent to Q? We will say there exists an X belonging to sigma psi belongs to F and does not belong to F, or vice versa, right? I will use VV for vice versa. Huh? So when are two states not equivalent, when are they separable? When there exists some string X which separates them, right? One of them leads to final state, and P leads to final state and Q does not lead to final state, or the other way, right? This is the idea of two states being separable. Now, in order to minimize the automaton, we have to know which state is equivalent to which, and we will have a data structure for recording all possible equivalences between states. Okay, and the data structure is this equivalence we'll write down as a table of what is equivalent to what. So, I'm trying to find out whether P is equivalent to Q or not. That is what I want to write down. So in the top row, I have got P, and in the columns, I have got Q, right? Here I have got P, and here I have got Q, right? And what do I have? I have one column for each P and one row for each Q. And at position, let's say 0, 1, I'm trying to determine whether 0 is equivalent to 1 or not, right? So let's take this automaton. Okay. So yeah, these are Qs and these are Ps. Now, is 0 equivalent to 1? Can somebody tell me?
No.
It is not the case. Why is that? Because string A distinguishes them, right? If you start from 1 on an A, you will accept, but if you start from 1 on 0, you will not accept. So these two are distinguishable, right? So if they are not distinguishable, I will leave this square as, I will mark this square as dot. Okay, red dot. Because 0 and 1, oh sorry, 0 and 1 can be distinguishable. This is not true, right? In that case, I'll put a tick here. And what does this tick denote? That 0 is not equivalent to 1. 0 is separable from 1. So is the notion of tick clear to you? What about 0 and 2? Are they equivalent?
Not equivalent.
Not equivalent. So we will put a tick here also. P is 0 and Q is 2, and we will put a tick here, right? What about 1 and 3?
Not equivalent.
So we will put in the column 1 and row 3 also we'll put a tick, because these are not equivalent. So all things which are not equivalent, we'll put a tick. Now one thing to know is that if you consider the diagonal entries, Every state is obviously trivially equivalent to itself, right?
Right.
So on all these diagonal elements, we will put a dot. We don't need to do any analysis to determine the status of whether they are equivalent or not. So diagonal entries are all equivalent, right? And remember that this equivalence relation is symmetric. If P is equivalent to Q, this implies Q is equivalent to P, right? So the status of 0, 1 is same as the status of 1, 0. So we don't need to really determine, this matrix is symmetric. And so we will not bother about these elements because, their status is kind of clear from the lower half of the matrix, right? Whatever is the entry here, same is the entry here. And whatever is the entry here, same is the entry here, right? This is a symmetric matrix. If you transpose it, you will get the same matrix. So we will not bother about filling up the elements in the black part. And the diagonal part is already filled. We know these things are equivalent. It is the lower triangular part of the matrix which needs to be determined, right? And we will write down the status of whether two states are separable or they are equivalent by putting ticks wherever they are separable, right? So that is the data structure. And wherever they are not separable, we will leave a blank. So blank is same as, dot. I mean, we don't. So this is what you want to. So this is how you can denote which states are equivalent to which state. This is the data structure we are going to use. Is the data structure clear? So what about, column 3 and row 4? What about this entry? Should it be tick or not?
No, sir.
It should not be tick. So we'll leave it blank. Okay. What about 0 and 5? That is 0 and 5.
Separable.
So we'll put a tick there, right? So like that, we have got to complete this table. Now here we completed the table intuitively, but there is an algorithm. There is quite a famous algorithm which will complete this table, the lower diagonal part of the lower triangular part of the table by systematically exploring, equivalences between states. Okay. And that algorithm is due to Hofcroft. Okay. He gave it in 71. Sorry, he got his Turing Award in 71. He gave this algorithm in 71. I think he got his Turing Award in 79. And the book, one of the books we are using is by Hofcroft, Motwani and Ullmann, right? Ullmann also went on to get his Turing Award. So all these works are by, very famous scientists. Turing Award is like our Nobel Prize in computer science. And this is Hofcroft's algorithm. Okay. So what does the algorithm do? Before I give you the algorithm, okay, there are two steps that I have got to explain to you. First thing is that in order to determine which states are equivalent, we set up this table, right? This table where columns denote the states P and the rows denote the states Q. And every entry in the table tells you whether state P is equivalent to Q or not. And we fill only the parts below the diagonal. Okay. So we first set up this table. That is the first step. We create this table in the computer memory, if you like. Next, what we want to do is we want to mark some obvious states which are not equivalent. That is, we want to add ticks. I will rub these ticks and we will start afresh. We will add ticks between states which are clearly not equivalent. And we will do this by first considering state pairs, pairs PQ, such that epsilon separates them. Empty string separates them. That is, one of them is a final state and one of them is not a final state. So all pairs where one of them is final and one of them is non-final are clearly not equivalent, right? So we'll find out all pairs of states, in the lower triangular part, such that one of them is final and one of them is non-final. So let's start. What about 0, 1? That does not come under this. What about 0, 2? Also, both are non-final. So we cannot mark it by this first step, What about 0, 3? 3 is final and 0 is non-final. So we put a tick here. Okay, so what we are doing is what is called the initialization phase of marking this table. Phase or phase 0. Okay, phase 0 is what we are doing. So 03 is marked, 04 also has to be marked because 0 is non-final and 4 is final. Please pay attention, you will have to create such tables in the exam. Okay, 05 also has to be marked. What about 1, 2 cannot be marked because both are non-final. Okay, 1, 3 can be marked, 1, 4 can be marked, and 1, 5 can be marked because 1 is non-final and 3, 4, 5 are final. So I can mark it like that. What about 2? Again, 2, 3 can be marked. What about 2, 4? Can somebody help me fill 2, 4? So what about pair 2, 4, which actually denotes this element? Second column and fourth row. Are they separable?
Yes, sir.
So I put a tick there. 2, 5 separable. So I put a tick there. What about 3, 4? I cannot put a tick here.
Equivalent.
Well, that is what you are guessing. What I am saying is at least both of them are final or both of them are non-final. So I cannot put a tick in the initial phase. Later they may turn out to be inequivalent, but currently I cannot put tick. Similarly, 3, 5 also cannot be put and 4, 5 cannot be put. So this is my initial marking of this table. I certainly know that these ticked entries are not equivalent. There may be other entries which may be not equivalent due to longer strings. But here I have only separated states using the string epsilon. You get that? So this is the first or the initialization phase of my algorithm, and that is here. First I create the table and then I mark all pairs PQ such that P belongs to F and Q does not belong to F or vice versa. That is all pairs PQ such that exactly one of them belongs to the final state and the other one doesn't. Such pairs I mark out in this table, and that gives me the phase 0 marking of this table. And clearly you can see that this pair of states are not equivalent. There may be other pairs of states which are still blank, which may be not equivalent. I don't know, maybe some longer string makes them, separates them, but that I have not yet worked out. So is this clear to you? I hope this is. Next, I'm going to use a very important property which is true of this, right? Suppose P is not equivalent to Q by some X other than epsilon, because things which are not equivalent by epsilon we have worked out. So basically for all strings of the form P AX AY, X is of the form AY and there is such a string AY which separates these two, right? Suppose that is the case. Since these two are not equivalent, we have delta hat of P on AY belongs to F and delta hat of Q on AY does not belong to F or vice versa, right? Vice versa means this does not belong to F and this belongs to F, right? This is because suppose it is separable by some string longer than that, then that string X must be of the form some letter A followed by Y. So this property will hold. But this is same as delta hat of delta of P on A on Y belongs to F and delta hat of delta of Q on A followed by Y does not belong to F or vice versa, right? So we have these two states, delta hat of PA and delta hat of QA, you know, which are not equivalent. That is, we have this delta hat, delta. It's just a single letter, so we don't need a hat. Delta of PA is not equivalent to delta of QA. And why is that the case? Because the simpler string y, smaller string y distinguishes these two states, right? So you know, in order to determine whether two states are not distinguishable, we have to find two states, P prime and Q prime. So call this as P prime. So this is same as P prime, and this is same as Q prime, which are not equivalent, and they are obtained by going from PQ on the same letter A, right? So we will use this kind of idea to do the following. So suppose we have a pair P prime, Q prime. If there exists a pair P prime such that P prime is not equivalent to Q prime, and delta of P, some other state P on A is equal to P prime, and delta of Q on A is equal to Q prime. Okay. My claim is that if this is the case, then let me write that implication a little bit. Good Lord, where am I? I lost that. This curly bracket, I will write it in blue here, implies that P is not equivalent to Q. Now this is a very important property. Suppose there exists a pair P prime Q prime such that they are not equivalent. And you also have this pair of states PQ such that from P on an A you go to this P prime, and from Q on an A you go to Q prime. Then I claim that P is also not equivalent to Q prime. Can anybody justify this? See, what we are saying is that these two are not equivalent. So there is some string Y which distinguishes P prime and Q prime. And from P on an A you go to P prime, right? And from Q on an A you go to Q prime. So there is a longer string called AY, which will distinguish P and Q. If P prime and Q prime are separated by some string Y, and if delta of PA is equal to P prime and delta of QA is equal to Q prime, then the string AY separates P and Q, right? This is an important property, and that makes the second step of this algorithm. What do? We repeatedly execute the algorithm in phases. So first we had phase 0 where we mark the strings which are separated by epsilon. Now we repeatedly execute this step 3. Step 3 consists of the following things. You know, what do? From the table, pick up each unmarked state. You know, so states which are marked are already marked. They are separable. But those blank squares that we have got in our table, you know, pick up an unmarked pair and check for every A belonging to the alphabet whether delta of PA and delta of QA is marked. If it is marked, then by the property we just showed, we also mark PQ. If it is not marked, we leave it blank as it is. And this we do for every unmarked state and for every letter. So that finishes one phase of this algorithm, you know. And then what happens is, if a square got marked in a phase, then you go and do the next phase. You keep doing this next phase. Still in a phase, no additional square gets marked, right? So in that case, no change has occurred to the table. In that case, you terminate. And that case, whatever is left as blank will be equivalent. This is the claim of Hopcroft. That, you know, you repeatedly do these marking phases, and at the end, when no further change occurs to the table, the blank squares exactly denote things which are equivalent. Okay, so this is the algorithm. It's called partition refinement algorithm. So let's work out this algorithm on an example so that a few things become clear to you. So this is what we had done in the phase 0, right? This is phase 0 marking of for our automaton. Now we do phase 1. In order to do phase 1, what do we have to do? We have to pick up one every unmarked square we will have to execute. So we will systematically go through all unmarked squares. So first we will pick up the element 0, 1. Okay, 0, 1 on an A will go where? Can anybody tell me? 0 on an A goes to 0 on an A goes to 1 and 1 on an A goes to 3. So the pair 0, 1 will go to 1, 3, right? Do you see that? Now this 1, 3 is already marked, right? So this is a marked pair that you go to, and hence you mark this 0, 1 also, because if there is a string distinguished separating 1, 3, then the longer, let's say that string is Y, then the longer string AY will separate 0, 1. So you mark this square. So we are going to go and I'm going to add that mark, in blue color as tick, and below the tick I'm going to write 1 because I'm separating them in phase 1. This 1 is not required, but I'm just putting it for your clarity. So in phase 1 we have marked 0, 1. What about 0, 2? Okay, similarly we can consider 0, 1 and the letter B. 0, 1 on a B. Okay, 0, 1 we don't need to consider anymore because it has already got marked. So even if other letters mark it, we don't care. It's already ticked. So we go to the next, unmarked square, which is 0, 2. On 0, 2, on a letter A, what happens? What pair will I go to? Come on. 1, 4. Now is 1, 4 marked? 1, column 1, row 4. It is already marked in the initial phase. So we are going to a marked square, and if this is marked, then the original state from which you came also has to be marked. So I will mark this 0, 2. So I will put here also a tick, and this is also being done in the phase 1, right? Next I have square 1, 2, right? 1, 2 on an A will go to what? 3, 4, correct? Which is unmarked. So I don't mark it. Now I consider 1, 2 with another letter B, because if it is not marked, I have to consider maybe it will get marked with B. So on a B it will go to 4, 3, right? Now this 4, 3 is equivalent to 3, 4, because these things are, this equivalence is symmetric. So we can also call this as 3, 4 if you like, and this is unmarked. So 1, 2 does not get marked in phase 1 because no change occurred to it. Okay, so this will not get marked, and you can work this out. What about 3, 4? 3, 4 will also not get marked. 3, 5 will not get marked, and 4, 5 will not get marked, right? So in this phase 1, two squares got marked, right? 2 elements of this diagonal got marked, and then we have to do phase 2 now. Because something got marked, by cascade, it will then mark some further squares in future. So now we consider in phase 2, we consider the remaining squares, and we will consider 1, 2. Now 1, 2 will take you to 3, 4, which is unmarked. 3, 4 will take you to 3, 4 on A or B will take you to 5, 5, which is unmarked, right? And so you will see that within phase 2, which I will write in black, phase 2, no new square gets marked. Gets marked, right? And because no new gets, after finishing phase 1, we do phase 2, we do this kind of things. We find that everything goes to unmarked only. All unmarked squares on a transition take you to an unmarked square. So this phase did not add any marking to my table, and hence my algorithm finishes. And when the algorithm finishes, all the squares which are left blank denote state pairs which are equivalent. So from this, what can I conclude? What I conclude, I will write as B. Square 1, 2 is unmarked. Therefore, 1 is equivalent to 2, and square 3, 4 is unmarked. So 3 is equivalent to 4, and 3, 5 is unmarked. So 3 is equivalent to 5. And this thing says 4 is equivalent to 5, which could have also come by transitivity. So I get all my equivalences which are true in the automaton, I get by the unmarked squares at the end of the algorithm. So I hope you have got some sense of how to run this algorithm. And that is this Hopcroft's algorithm, which is given here. So what is the algorithm? First, you create that table, as I told you, with with columns representing states P and the rows representing states Q. Of course, diagonal entries will never be marked. So you by default call them as marked. All the upper triangular matrix, you don't care about. For the lower triangular matrix, first you do the initialization phase, that is phase 0, which is step 2. In phase 0, you mark all the pairs PQ such that one of them is final and the other is non-final, which is what we had done in red here, right? All final and non-final states we had already separated because they can be separated by string this thing. Then you run the algorithm extending the marking phase by phase. In each phase, what do? You pick up, systematically every unmarked square. And for that unmarked square on a letter, you find out which is the pair you go to. And if that pair is already marked, then this pair PQ that you picked up, mark that also. If you go to an unmarked pair, then you try again. And you keep trying this, you complete the phase. That way some more squares will get marked. Then at the end of the phase, if at least one square got marked, it in turn will lead to further squares getting marked. So you start a new phase. If there is a phase where no new square gets marked, the algorithm finishes, and at that point, whichever are the blank entries, they will tell you which are the equivalent states. Because this is a blank entry, 1 is equivalent to 2. And this is a blank, so 3 is equivalent to 4. So this is the algorithm. Now, got the algorithm? Any questions about the algorithm? We'll do a couple of examples today so that this gets formed up in your mind. Okay, this is the algorithm for detecting which pairs of states are equivalent, and this was given by Hopcroft, in 71. Okay, 1971. Okay, and now first question I ask you is, will this algorithm always terminate, or can it go on forever? Of course, marking of each phase will terminate, because in each phase we'll systematically go through only the unmarked squares within the lower triangular matrix, consider them one by one and explore it, right? So each phase will terminate, but will the number of phases be infinite, or will we terminate?
Since there are only finitely many pairs and every phase will mark a new pair, it will terminate.
Yeah, absolutely. In every phase, at least one pair must be marked or you will finish, right? And since the number of pairs are finite, in fact, the number of pairs are n choose 2, right? Or nc2, whichever notation you are using, right? The algorithm will take at most so many phases, right? So the algorithm will terminate. We are clear about that. Okay. In each pass or each phase, at least one new pair must get marked. That is the argument that was given, right? Okay. Now this is some algorithm. At the end it is leaving some squares unmarked and some squares marked, right? And the claim of Hopcroft for this algorithm was that at the end of this algorithm, if PQ is marked, if and only if P is not equivalent to Q. That is exactly the pairs which are not state pairs which are not equivalent get marked, and those things which are not marked are basically equivalent. That is what he's saying. So it says first thing is equivalent to the third thing. And if in second, I am just writing the definition of P not equivalent to Q. That is, there exists some string such that P on X goes to F. So this second line is the definition of the third line, right? And we say that PQ is marked if and only if P is not equivalent to Q. This is the claim of Hopcroft. Okay? And we will be doing this proof today. But before we do this proof, I want to go through some examples of this algorithm, so that your intuition gets clear. So what I'm going to do is.
Sir, I have a question.
Tell me.
I mean, basically this algorithm is a brute force algorithm, but right? We're just checking every pair at the end of the day. Then what was so special about it that it even got like a Turing award and such?
No, it didn't get Turing award just for this, but this was very, firstly, this is suggesting this idea of equivalence of states, and collapsing automata based on equivalence of states, and then systematically finding out it's brute force, but you see, it's also a little smarter if you do it naively, since there are infinitely many strings, that, and you have to consider which of those infinitely many strings will separate pair of states, is kind of unclear, right? Because the definition of P being separated from Q is that there exists some string in sigma star which will separate the two states, right? Now you cannot enumerate all possible strings and check whether it's separating the two states. So here was a systematic way of exploring, which pairs can be separated in a finite way. This is what was special about it. So it's not really brute force. Brute force would require you to consider every possible string in sigma star and checking where P and Q take you. So this is a little smarter than that. It basically says you first initialize the marking, then extend that marking based on the given marking, extend the marking with new pairs. So it's kind of little bit like dynamic programming. Okay, if you have heard of dynamic programming. And once you mark a pair, you never mark it again because you're finished with that, right? Even if it's useful in marking some other pair, you don't go and redo that work. So I think it was when it came out in 71. I mean, it seems a very simple algorithm, but it was a bit of a novelty. And actually, this scheme that was given an equivalence relation. Basically, how to find the quotiented automaton under that. We have considered this state equivalence relation. There are other equivalence relations. There's something called bisimulation. Okay, and there are many other This algorithm will work for partitioning the set of states under any equivalence relation of the automaton. So it's quite a general algorithm. So I don't know if you are not impressed. I can understand that. Now it seems simple, but many things which are simple in the end, but they turn out to be very difficult to find before. And that is the mark of good research, that finally something simple solves a problem which seems difficult. Here the problem was how to systematically explore all the strings such to guarantee that the two states are equivalent. Because in order to guarantee that two states are equivalent, we have to somehow show that every possible string will not separate them, right? And this algorithm manages to do that. So
I mean, a question that is slightly beyond the course per se, but this is a optimal, rather a construction for an optimal solution, right?
This is not, it's an algorithm. It terminates and gives you the answer. It turns out that this is not necessarily optimal. It's very near the optimal, but it will take time order n square or n cubed, right? There is an n log n algorithm which also Hopcroft gave. Slight optimization on this, okay? But we are not going to do where n is the number of states of the automaton. So we are not going to do that refinement of the algorithm, but basically this algorithm is there. Okay, and since minimization of automaton is such an important application, it got some attention. So
I'm not clear about the point about this solution not being optimal. Like, wasn't that our case?
So see, first of all, it will go to n choose 2 number of phases, right? In the worst case.
Yes.
Right. That is that is what? N into n minus 1 by 2, right? So this is order n square, right? So although this is a polynomial time algorithm, you know, there is a faster algorithm which will take time order n log n, which we are not doing. So this cannot be called optimal, right? Because there is a faster algorithm which will also give you separation of states.
No, sir, I meant optimal as in optimal final automaton.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that. Okay, that's a good question. So we will ask that question at the end of this class, but I need to move on. That's very good question. What you are asking is that this quotiented automaton that we obtain, is it the smallest possible? Correct?
Yes, sir.
Is it the minimal automaton you are getting? Actually, this algorithm doesn't guarantee that yet. And in fact, Hofstra's algorithm makes no such claim. Okay, so that's an important question. We'll deal with it in a separate lecture actually. But one thing is that the algorithm claims that this theorem is true. That is, at the end of it, you know, a pair is marked if and only if these two states are, you know, separable. And if they are not separable, they will not be marked. So you will not miss out any pair of states which is separable, and you will not falsely mark any pair which is equivalent. That is what this theorem says. Okay. Now,
yes,
you know,
sir, this is clear.
If this algorithm is clear, can you try and give a proof? But before we come to that question, let's do some examples. So I'm going to do an example here. So I have an automaton which states, this green may not be very visible. Let me move to blue. So I have a state 0, I have a state 1, I have a state 2, and I have a state 3. And I'm going to have 3 and 1 as my final states. I'll have a single letter alphabet. 0 and 2 are non-final state. This is the initial state. And I cycle through them, and the alphabet is just letter A. Okay. Very simple automaton. Now this is not, you know, what is the language it recognizes? Somebody tell me. So I'm going to pick up somebody randomly. Is Uday Gohil here? Hi, Uday.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, Uday, what is the language this automaton will recognize?
I mean.
Okay, so I'll write
here. And A star. A star. Yeah. A star. Even
is A followed by A star, right?
Yeah.
This is what you mean. Perfectly correct. So odd number of A's. Yeah, it's correct. What you're saying is fine. But do you think this is the smallest automaton which will recognize this language?
No, sir.
You can do a two-state automaton, right?
Yes.
Now what we are going to do is we are going to apply the minimization algorithm to that. So for that, what do I have to do? I'll do this in red. I have to create columns for each state, 1, 2, and 3, right? And what I have is something like this. And then I have columns for each of them. And here I will have rows 0, 1, 2, and 3, right? So you have to learn to build this table for your exam. Okay, I will extend this above also. And 3. And you have every row. Agreed? This is the skeleton table. And the diagonals cannot be separated. We know that. That's the property of the state. And the things above the diagonal, we are not bothered about. So we will not bother about things above the diagonal. These things don't even exist. Okay. We have got to fill the entries in the lower triangular matrix, right? Now, what is the phase 0? So can you tell me phase 0? Okay. Phase 0 is what? You separate every non-final state from final state. right? So you go over every square, which denotes a pair of states. This square 0, 1, so column 0, row 1, denotes the pair 0, 1. Can it be separated?
Yes, sir.
So I will tick here and I will mark a 0 there because it can be separated by the initialization phase. What about 0, 2? Somebody else answer. Can 0, 2 be separated initially? Don't look at whether there exists a string. I'm saying in the initial phase, we consider the pair and check whether one is final and another is non-final. Cannot be separated because both are non-final, right? What about 0, 3? 0 is non-final, 3 is final, so it can be separated. So this is 0. What about 1, 2? 1, 2 can be separated because 1 is final and 2 is non-final. So this is also separated. 1, 3, both are final, so cannot be separated. And 2, 3 can be separated. So in the initialization phase, I get this marking. This 0 subscript I have written just to say that this tick comes from the initialization phase, right? So my initial is the marking in the 0th phase or the initialization phase clear? Now we go to phase 1. Sorry, that should be black. So in phase 1, first we go through each unmarked square once. So first unmarked square pair is 0, 2, right? Corresponding to this square. And there is only one letter. So 0, 2 on an A will go to what? Can somebody tell me where it will go? 0 will go to on A?
1, 3.
1, 3. Is 1, 3 already marked? Not marked. This 1, 3 is not marked, right? So 0, 2 remains unmarked. So I will write here unmarked, right? Yeah. So 0, 2 I cannot mark, and this is the only letter. This did not get marked. Now I consider 1, 3, which is the remaining pair. So 1, 3 on an A will go where?
2, 0.
2, 0, right? 2, 0 is same as 0, 2. They are symmetric. And 2, 0 is also unmarked. So, these two pairs led to each other and both were unmarked. So in phase 1, there was no marking, no new marking happened, right? So the algorithm terminates. Phase 1, no new marking happened and the algorithm terminates. And what are the equivalences we get? So please, somebody can somebody tell me? So Harshvardhan, are you there? Okay, let's get some new people in. Is Pooja there? Okay, I will go down. Rani? I think people are.
Yes, sir.
Rani, so we have terminated with this table. Now, which pairs of states are equivalent? All unmarked squares denote pairs of states which are equivalent. Which are the unmarked squares here?
2, 0 and 3, 1 are
Right.
not marked.
So, since 2, 0 is unmarked, I will say 0 is equivalent to 2. Okay. And 1 and 3, 1, 3 is unmarked. So I will also say that 1 is equivalent to 3. Right? Sorry. Right. What will happen is in this automaton, these two final states I'll collapse into a single final state. Let me draw it in green. So I'll get one state for this two, and I will get one state for this 0 and 2. Right? I will get a 2-state automaton, and I will work out transition between them. So I will get one state which I will let me call it as 0, 2. Okay, and I will get one state as 1, 3. Okay. These are the two states I will get in my new automaton. One coming from the partition 0, 2 and one coming from partition 1, 3. Initial state was 0, so its partition is 0, 2. So this becomes my initial state. 1 was a final state, so its partition becomes final state. So this becomes the final state. And now I have to work out transitions between them. 0 on an A goes to 1. So 0 on this partition on an A will go to this partition. Okay, similarly 2 on an A will go to 3. I mean, you will find that once you have drawn an arrow, you pick up any other element, it will take you to the same partition. We proved this. 1 on an A goes to 2. So from the partition of 1, I will go to partition of 2. And this is the smaller automaton that I have constructed using Hofstadt's algorithm. So is this clear? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. I don't know if I should do one more example. It's just more of the same. Okay, very quickly we can do that. So let's consider an automaton consisting of state 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the final states are 0 and 3. Okay, and there is a single letter A, right? So in order to minimize this automaton, first we have to create this table. You know, all the pairs of states are elements of this table. You know, here is P, here is Q, and of course, as before, all the diagonal elements can never be separated. So we put dot there for our convenience. Everything above the diagonal will be obtained from the lower triangular because the matrix is symmetric. So we will not bother about this. Okay, and then we start with phase 0. So 0. Now I'm going to just start from the end of the class and ask you to tell me, you know, which pairs are to be marked, you know, by phase 0. So, okay. So let's start with Vishal. Vishal, we have this unmarked square 0, 1. Will it get marked in the initialization phase? Vishal, are you here?
Hello.
Yes. So will 0, 1 pair be marked in the initialization phase?
No.
When do we mark a pair in an initialization phase?
Like if they are like, what do you say that? Equivalence thing, right?
No. What you check is whether one of them is final state
Oh yeah,
and the other
final
one
state.
is not
Yeah,
final.
other is yeah. So 0
what
is
about
like
0,
the final
1?
state. 0 is final and 1 is not final.
So we should mark it, right?
Oh yeah.
So let's do it. No, that's okay. This is like a tutorial. So we are doing this. So this will get marked in the 0th phase. What about 0, 2? Next person. So
we will not
I think you, Vinay, 0, 2.
Yes, sir, it will get marked.
Okay, so I'll mark it. You are right because 0 is final. What about 0, 3? So we have got Tirthankar.
0, 3 will not be marked because they're
very
equivalent.
Good. 0, 4. Next person, Suraj.
It will be marked.
Okay, excellent. So I will finish with this, and 0, 5 will also get marked. What about 1, 2? Not marked. Satish, will 1, 2 get marked? I think Satish is not there. Rohit?
No, sir.
So 1, 2 will not get marked because both are non-final, right?
Yes.
Yeah. What about 1, 3? Satish? Rohit?
No, sir. It will also not get marked.
1, 3. Consider the pair.
Oh, sorry. Yes, it will.
Okay, so I'll mark this also in 0 phase. Rani, what about 1, 4?
Sir, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes, we shouldn't mark that.
So should we mark 1, 4?
No, sir.
Okay. Why? Because both are non-final, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so that's correct. Your correct answer. Pooja, what about 1, 5? Sorry, I'll come back to this. 1, 5?
Not marked.
because both are non-final. So this is correct. So similarly 2, 3 I will mark because 3 is final, and 2, 4 I will not mark, 2, 5 I will not mark. Then 3, 4 I will mark because 3 is final and 4 is not final. 3, 5 also I will mark, and 4, 5 I will not mark. So this is my phase 0. Everybody clear about this? This is the initial marking in step 2. Next I go to phase 1. Phase 1 I start with every unmarked square in order. So I will start with column 0, 1 unmarked square, 0, 3, right? 0, 3, there is only one letter. So on an A, 0, 3 will go to 1, 4, correct? And 1, 4 is not marked. 1, 4, see, it is not marked in the previous phase. So this will remain unmarked. Okay. I go to next column, I get 1, 2. Okay, 1, 2. 1, 2 on A will take me to 2, 3, right? But 2, 3 is already marked in the previous phase. So I will mark this is marked. So I will mark the new pair 1, 3, which was not marked before. Now I mark the new pair, 1, 2. So do you see how I am marking this pair 1, 2 in phase 1? I hope everybody is clear that this new mark arose in this pair. Now let's consider the pair 1, 4. So somebody has to help me with that. Okay, I will write it in red here. 1, 4 on an A. So let's go to Piyush. Piyush, 1, 4 will go to what? Is Piyush there? Okay, Parth. Parth, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Parth, the pair 1, 4 on letter A will take you to which pair?
5, 2.
2 and?
2 and 5.
2 and 5. Is 2, 5 marked? So you have to consider the table in the previous phase. 2, 5 is not marked. It's blank, right?
Right.
So this is unmarked. So 1, 4 also does not get marked. Okay. Now we consider the next 1, 5. So Parth, I continue asking you. 1, 5 on A will go to?
2, 0.
2, 0. Is 2, 0 marked? It is same as 0, 2.
Yes, marked.
So this is marked. So we've got to mark the 1, 5, right?
Yes.
So in phase 1, 1, 5 also get marked. So I'll put a tick and I'll put number 1 below it, right? And this is the way in which you complete the table. So 2, 4, what will happen? It will go to 3, 5, and 3, 5 is marked, right? So I'll put a mark here also. I'll get a 1 here, and 2, 5, 2, 5 will be unmarked. So I will leave this as unmarked. And 4, 5, what will happen? 4, 5 will go to mark pair 5, 0. So I will mark this in 1. So this is what I will get at the end of phase 1. And some new squares got marked. So I have to now consider phase 2. Because in this phase some progress was made. So I will now go to phase 2. In phase 2, I've got square 1, 3, 0, 3. So what will happen to 0, 3? 0, 3 will go to 1, 4. Right? Will go to 1, 4, which is unmarked. So 0, 3 will remain unmarked. 1, 4 will go to 2, 5, which is still unmarked. 2, 5 is unmarked. So 0, 3 ho gaya. Then I have to go to 1, 4. So this will be unmarked. 1, 4 will go to 2, 5, which is unmarked. So no progress here for this square. Next I have this one remaining
I think
square.
there's a mistake because in phase 1 we have 1, 4 goes to 2, 5, and then in the diagram we marked 2, 4 as equivalent to 1.
No, sorry, you are talking about which transition?
1-4 goes to 2-5.
1-4 goes to 2-5. Now what about 2-5? It is unmarked.
Yeah.
So we don't mark 1-4. Right?
Okay.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. In phase 2 also 1-4 remains unmarked. And now we have this last square called 2-5. What happens to 2-5? 2-5 goes to what? 3-0. Right? Or 0-3. Same thing. Which is also unmarked. 0-3 is unmarked. So all three remain unmarked. And there was no progress in phase 2 and we finish. So the algorithm finishes here and the equivalences you get at the end. So you terminate here. Yeah, after phase 2. And equivalences you get in the end are what? 0 is equivalent to 3. And next 1 is equivalent to 4. 1 is equivalent to 4. And 2 is equivalent to 5. Yeah. So obviously, 0 becomes equivalent to 3, 1 becomes equivalent to 4, and 2 becomes equivalent to 5. And you get a 3-state automaton which is equivalent to it. So I hope you all understood how this partition refinement algorithm works by gradually adding marks. Okay. Okay. We already did this, for the original automaton, but your exercise is to fill this table. So take this slide and complete this table using the partition refinement algorithm. Okay, that is your assignment. Okay, now there was the proof to be done, which is that if PQ is marked, then P is not equivalent to Q, and if P is not equivalent to Q, PQ will get marked. Although we only consider, finite number of steps, somehow if two things are not equivalent, they will eventually get marked. This is the theorem of Hofcroft, and we need to give a proof of that. So I think we are at the end of the class, but do you see that we have some algorithm and we are claiming that this will find out all, in separable pairs. It will not miss out any separable pair. In theory, to separate two pairs, we have to consider, all possible strings. Until there exists a string, however long, which separates them, the pair must be marked. But we are only considering some finitely many steps, and we are claiming that we are finding out exactly the set of, separable pairs of states. Okay, that is this theorem. This is an if and only if theorem. Basically, these two steps are just the definition. So to say that the first line implies the second line, this is an if and only if result. So if the first line is true, we should prove that the second line is true, and vice versa. That is, if the second converse, that is, if the second line is true, the first line is also true. This is what we want to prove, right? So we'll prove this theorem in two parts. In the first part, we'll say that if PQ gets marked in the algorithm, then there will exist some string X which will separate these states P and Q. That is, everything we mark is sound. If we mark a square, then there will definitely exist a string which will separate these. Do you see that obviously? So what will the proof look like? Anybody can give me an intuitive argument as to why this is correct? That if any time in the algorithm, if we mark up a square, then that pair of states is separable by some string X. Well, the best way is to exhibit that string X, right? Or we have to show the existence of such a string X. So how do we do this? Proof is by induction on word X. What does that mean? As the first step, we do a base step. Base step, we assume that my string X is epsilon. I'm sorry, I'm making it by induction on phase where the gets marked. What do I mean by that? what I'll prove is that if something gets marked in phase 0, then there is a string which separates them. If something, assuming that something gets marked in phases 0 to I, correctly, I will show that if I mark something in phase I plus 1, that will also be correct. That is, there will be a string which will separate them. This is what I have to prove by induction. So the base case is PQ marked in phase 0. This implies what? P belongs to F and Q does not belong to F, or vice versa, right? This is how we mark pairs in this thing, right? Do you agree? But this implies what? Delta hat of P on epsilon, which is same as P, belongs to F, and delta hat of Q on epsilon, which is same as Q, does not belong to F. So I've just added this extra, this thing. This shows that string epsilon separates them. Right? So if PQ is marked in phase 0, then string epsilon separates them, and hence my this lemma is correct for the initial phase 0 markings. Okay, now we consider induction step. That is, we assume that this property holds for all markings done up to phase I, right? And what we, if PQ gets marked in phase I plus 1. When does that happen? This implies that there exists state P prime and Q prime such that P prime, Q prime are already marked, right? And delta of P on A is equal to P prime, and delta of Q on A is equal to Q prime, right? So there must exist a marked pair on which you go to on some letter for some letter A, right? Do you agree this is the only way in which we will mark the pair PQ in phase I plus 1? Now, if this is the case, this underlined statement, if P prime, Q prime are already marked in previous phases, means what? Means what? There exists some Y such that Y separates sorry, let me write it in full. Okay. So there exists some Y which separates P prime and Q prime, and delta hat of Q prime Y does not belong to F or VV, vice versa, right? But then we also know that delta of PA is equal to P prime and delta of QA is equal to Q prime. So this shows that delta hat of P on AY, which is same as delta hat of P prime on Y, belongs to F, and delta hat of Q on AY does not belong to F or VV. That means string AY separates P and Q. This implies that P is not equivalent to Q. So we have proved by induction step that, and hence by induction, this lemma gets proved. Okay, so this is the proof of, the lemma in one direction. We can also have a converse proof where we say that if there exists a string which separates states P and Q, then this will get marked sometime. So you will not miss out any pair which is separable. The previous lemma, so this is another lemma, but the previous lemma showed that everything we marked was separable, and here we say that anything that is separable will get marked. Now I think we have overrun the time, so I will defer the proof of this to the next class. Okay? Because we have run out, it's a 5-minute proof, but we don't have time. We have run out of time. So I think I will stop here today. Some of you try to prove this yourself. Okay, try to give this proof. And I will ask you for your proof idea. So I will give you a hint. The proof is on. Proof is by induction on length of a string X. Length of X. That is what we'll do. That is, we'll first prove this lemma where this X is of length 0, that is, it is epsilon, and then assuming that it holds for all strings of length, all strings X, we'll try to prove it for the string, XA. Okay, that is how we'll try to do it. So that is the method. So I know this class was the proof part was a little involved, but I hope you will study this and come for the next class. So I think that will finish this topic of minimization of DFA. Yeah. And then that important question remains that we constructed a smaller automaton, but what is the guarantee that there is no further smaller automaton? So that is a topic of one further class. Okay. Any questions? Hi. Any questions?
Is there any quiz in this week?
There will be a quiz. I will release the quiz, maybe tomorrow, and you have to give it before the next class. Okay?
Okay.
It's to make sure that you have understood the basics of this construction and this algorithm and its properties. Okay? So you do have to study these properties. All the proofs that I have done are given in Cosen except for the proof of the last theorem. We did one half of that theorem as a lemma. The other half is still to be done, and Cosen actually gives both these lemmas as exercise. I have solved one of the exercises. The second one remains. So one thing we are doing in this course is we are also doing proofs. Although I suspect you may not be asked too much of, how you may not be asked to do the proofs in the exam. It's still important to know that when you do the work, you can design some algorithm, but you have to show that it does the job that it is required. And hence such theorems need to be proved. Okay. Yeah. Any other question?
Sir, where can we find the answer of the Cosen book solution?
Some of the solutions are given at the back of Cosen's book, and the rest you are supposed to work out yourself, no? But the proofs that I have done are part of the chapter. They are not part of the exercise. Okay, so you'll find those proofs given in the chapter. So there are 2 chapters in Cosen on minimizing DFA, and that is what we have more or less finished today. In the last class and this class.
Okay.
Yeah. So do read Cosen. You have the Cosen book, right? It was shared on the resources on this team.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are 2 chapters. One on the chapters are called lectures in Cosen's book, and these 2 chapters deal with minimization. But we've done everything that is required. Yeah. So I will stop recording.